Sonic Mania, Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, and 4 men and a baby. This is Staying In.
I've not told Pete or Dan this story. This wonderful tale
What is this
of
tale?
Kris. So I was off work for about 2.5 weeks, a few weeks ago. I'm back at work now, and it's lots of fun. And Kris, because he's a lazy lecturer, he's obviously off for like 300 weeks or something like that, like every year. Like,
yeah, that's about it, Sam. Yeah,
and
I hibernate.
So I was contacting him the other week. I was like, oh, why don't you come round tomorrow? It'll be great, and we'll get together and we'll play some games, and Lisa's around here too, and that'll be fantastic. And
nice.
Kris was like, oh, it's brilliant. Yeah, it's brilliant. And I was like, oh, maybe my friend Ricardo, he'll join us as well. That'd be great. We might go to the cinema. Put the phone down. Didn't think anything of it.
Brilliant. That sounds great. You've put together a really nice day.
Yes, I did. 40 minutes later. Bing bong.
Oh my god.
That's a bit weird. We weren't expecting anyone. Middle of the day on a Monday. Lisa goes to answer the door. She goes, "It's Kris." It's like, what? It's Kris. And I thought, he's finally gone.
There's no way.
Finally. and just the look on his face when we opened the door and went, "Have you got the days wrong?" He went, "What? You've got the days wrong." It's like, what? Just
I like the fact that it wasn't even like you gave him like a date.
Incredible.
That he got wrong. He got the word tomorrow wrong.
Yes, I know.
But Dan, I was a month premature.
So you're getting better, is that what you're saying?
It's in your DNA, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. It's hardwired into it. But yeah, Lisa enjoyed it because she just laughed at me for about half an hour.
Oh, fantastic. But the best thing is
she was loving it.
Ever since that day, it's always been, you we're meeting up tomorrow, Kris. Do you remember? Tomorrow. So he's been enjoying that. It was.
Did I tell you about a friend of mine who turned up for a job interview a week early? He booked a hotel, drove down there, and turned up on the day. And it's like, you're a week early. And it's like, oh, I've come all this way. Is there any chance I could have an interview?
Brilliant.
This is the same guy. This is the same guy. I've told you this story before, but I don't know if I mentioned it on this pod. Same guy went for an interview. He's an engineer, product design engineer. So he builds a variety of different things, and sometimes in interviews, they try and ask you these kind of lateral thinking questions to kind of take your temperature and see what kind of person you are.
Take your temperature.
I know, not literally. I mean, we're dealing with these are metaphors, Sam.
If you get 48 degrees Fahrenheit, you're in. Pressure's on.
So they asked him a question, which is basically what makes the sound in a car. So for him, it was all about thinking about the design of a car that would lead to that sound. And I know, Pete, you're an expert, having played Jalopy. You're an expert in terms of where that sound would come from.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just a lateral thinking question. But my friend was so nervous, he misheard the question. He thought they said, "What sound does a car make?" And instead of asking, like I told him afterwards, why didn't you just tell him to repeat the question? He just said, "Brum brum."
Oh my god! Did he get either of those jobs?
Yeah.
No, neither of them.
Right, yeah, no. I mean, to be fair, I wouldn't hire him. Like.
You see, I always go for the ice dive effect. Ever since we discovered ice dive and its magical healing properties, it has never let me down. In any job interview or anything I've done that's very important in my life.
So I've still got a bottle of Adidas Ice Dive shower gel, and it is I will use it on for the occasions where I'm thinking I need that little bit of that little bit of a boost.
The elixir of life.
Yeah,
Well, see, I use it because it has such strong powers around job interviews and getting new jobs. I would use it exclusively for that. I don't want to wear out any power.
Yeah, that's true.
I think I used it on my wedding day, and that was the only non-job occasion I used it.
Yeah.
But
you want to keep that stuff special.
Briefly, for listeners who aren't aware of the ice dive, very quickly.
This is how the story went. Pete brought his own shower gel, and it was something like a orange and jobo, like a proper fruity, top of the range.
It was a delight for the senses.
And Pete, and I quote, this is exactly what he said. Dan came out of the shower, and Pete went, sorry. He went, no. He went, Dan smells nice. And then proceeded to go into the shower and use Dan's ice dive.
No, it gets better. Because then Pete goes online to try and buy some new shower gel and goes to buy this ice dive, puts it in like his online basket, and then I know this because Pete told me this afterwards in confidence, obviously, which I respect, obviously. He then told me that before he proceed to check out, he stopped and thought, this shower gel smells like Dan. If I buy this, does that make me gay?
Yeah, that's because A, masculinity's so fragile, and B, but it's because I thought to myself, Dan, you were smelling so good, but I just thought, is that a bit too intimate? Because I was literally saying to myself, I want to smell like my friend. Now I will say this was at the height of my high stress, too many working hours job, and I think I might have been slightly mentally unbalanced at this point. But I just thought to myself, is this overstepping a boundary?
No, because there's a distinct difference between wanting to smell like someone and wanting to smell someone.
yeah, like wanting to smell like someone and giving them a kiss. But yeah, so that was a fun time.
The reason I bring it up is that the ice dive was recently used to great success. Sam, do you want to contextualise?
Contextualise? Well, yes. I used some of Kris's ice dive the day before I proposed to Lisa. And luckily, she just had to take one sniff.
Said, you smell like Dan.
I mean, I came out of the shower and Kris almost went down on a bended knee.
I know. It's extraordinary.
It's a powerful effect.
Well, just as he walked through the streets, just people just like falling on their knees either side of him.
Now, I think the greatest thing about this is now. So, remind me again. You proposed. Where were you when you proposed?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I don't know the story. So, tell us a story.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's a brilliant.
Tell us a story. Draw it with your imagination brush.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is something that I've been thinking about for a long time, and I finally got the ring, and Lisa didn't know that I bought this ring, and I'd actually been keeping it in a shoe because Lisa's not the tallest. So I knew that I had height as my advantage in terms of being able to hide stuff. So I just kept it in a shoe in a really high
on the roof
place in the wardrobe.
Like it was a packet of biscuits.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I used the Kris hiding technique. And so for about the last few months, it's been hiding the shoe while I've been sort of planning where and when.
Slowly taking on the scent of the shoe.
Well, Dan, you joke, but on numerous occasions, Lisa was just like, why don't you wear those shoes that I bought you anymore? and on a night out, she forced me to get the shoes with the ring down. So at one point within those months, like the ring was literally like a couple of feet away from her, while I had to like smuggle it out of the room. That was thrilling. And also throughout those months, she was constantly going on about the ring that I never got her. And how like she was really disappointed that like no ring that she's ever found has been like that, and like all of our friends are getting married and you're not proposing, and genuinely at some point
Dan smells great.
Yeah. What do you smell like? And I was on the verge several times just going upstairs and just handing her the shoe and just going there.
Just in annoyance.
So so finally we got this date planned, and but for our first date, I took Lisa on a champagne picnic. So I thought, it'd be good to do something like that again. So
That's a big first date.
I'm a very good dater, Dan.
Yeah.
Just saying. Very good.
And now I'll never know.
So we put this picnic together, and I booked us a hotel in the Lake District, and one that was quite near Lake Windermere, because I've been there before. I knew it was a nice location, and sort of time and money was quite tight. So I thought, this is a place I know. I know it's beautiful. I know we'll get a place just the two of us, and it'll be really, really nice, and we'll have a nice meal and a night at the hotel afterwards. So we're driving up to Lake District. Obviously, Lisa doesn't know any of this. She doesn't even know I've got her a ring. And she says, why don't we go to Kendal? It's like, it's not really. I kind of wanted to go to Lake Windermere. No, let's go to Kendal. It's quite nice there. I've been there before. Like, let's go. And we can go to the lake afterwards. So I thought, all right, okay, if we're going to the lake afterwards, this might be quite a nice sort of, sort of like fluffing for the event or whatever. So we got.
If she's planning part of it, it's throwing her off the scent.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
you got onto the scent of mint cake.
So we got to Kendal, and that was my agitation level at that point was about one or two. Like I was starting to get a little bit, because it was before then. Lisa was like, "Well, we'll go to the hotel actually before we go to the lake. You know, we can drop our stuff off and check in and whatever." I told the hotel what I was planning, you know, for the freebies and stuff. So I didn't want to go back to the hotel either. So at this point, Lisa was just like, "Well, what's wrong with you? Why, you got to make a decision. I can't keep on making the decisions for us." So then when we arrived in Kendal, she's like, "Well, I'm hungry. Let's have the picnic." It's like, "But no, but that's the picnic that I had, planned." And she's like, "No, I want to eat the picnic now." It's like, oh my God. So we ate the picnic on this like small patch of grass while it rained under a tree in Kendal. I was like,
the romance just dripping from the occasion.
This is never going to happen. And already at that point, I was thinking, I've just got to pick my moment. If I can just pick a moment and just do it, then
before she says, "Let's go to Birmingham" or something.
Well, then we went to Superdrug.
That sounds like is this the moment?
And the day
was just standing next to the shower gel.
That would be amazing. That would be like they've got. Have you seen here, Sam? They've got 2 for 1 on shampoo. Now's the time.
Strike while the iron is hot.
When 2 become 1.
Very good.
I love you with my head and my shoulders.
They got these fancy rings here. Not as fancy as this one. So already I felt like the day was ebbing away from me ever so slowly, and getting ever more agitated, because I was just thinking, well, if we don't get to the lake, where am I going to do it? When am I going to do it? And so I didn't really know what to do. So I finally convinced Lisa, let's go to the lake and let's go for a nice walk before we go back to the hotel. So there's a bit of a safer ground there. But we actually ended up on the wrong side of the lake, to where there's actually a really nice walk in the forest. So we ended up in this place called Barrow, and we couldn't actually park in there because it was too busy. It was absolutely heaving with tourists, because by this time, luckily, the sun had come out and there's hundreds and hundreds of tourists there, so we couldn't park. So we ended up parking 1.5 miles away from Barrow. Ended up walking probably about half a mile in the wrong direction. At this point, Lisa said that the day was a disaster. And I thought, right, I'm just going to do it.
This is the story you'll tell your kids when you're old.
We were in the middle of an A road in the Lake District, and I thought, I'm just going to do it. Just, fuck this. Like, you get the day you deserve.
Middle of a dual carriageway.
And at loads of points, like there was loads of like little turnings and side streets up into forests and little walkways, and I was like, let's just go up here. It might be quite nice up here. It looks like there's a nice forest like overlooking the lake. It's like Lisa was like, I don't want to go anywhere with you. I want to go to the water where the tourists are. Let's go and get some ice cream and some tea. And I'm like, no. And she was just getting more and more frustrated because I wasn't committing to a decision, because I knew if I committed to go and get ice cream, go and get tea, the time would just be running out. So we finally managed to walk the correct way into Barrow, and we got some ice cream. I wasn't particularly hungry, like I'm nervous. I've got this like very expensive ring in my pocket, and then suddenly I saw it. I I saw the idea, and I saw these little boats that they were hiring to go out into the lake. I thought, right, I'm going to hire one of these boats. So like, do you want to go out in the water? No, of course I don't want to go out in the water. You know I don't really like going out in water. It's like, yeah, but it'll be all right.
I'm terrified of open stretches of water, Sam.
Yes. It'll be fine. Look, I'll pay for it. It'll be really nice, and we'll go out onto this boat. And after a few minutes of cajoling, and because it was pretty much the first idea that I committed to for the whole day, Lisa was like, "Fine, I'll go out on a boat with you if it'll, make you happy." So we hired this little boat. It's just the two of us. It's really cool. She's got like this little electric motor, and I was at the helm with my little steering wheel, and just like I just went, we're getting as far away from everyone that I can think of. Like, no one's going to ruin this. Like, get away from all the super drugs and bootses, and And we got out into the middle of the lake, and I was, absolutely. I've never been so nervous in my life, to the point where I didn't actually ask Lisa a question when I got the ring out. So I got her to the front of the boat, and I didn't even go down on one knee because I was like, I'm in charge of a ship. Like, I've got to be responsible. Like, one hand on
I've got responsibility.
like, one hand on the wheel, and I got the ring out. And Lisa knows verbatim what I said, and it was something like, you know how you were, saying that I should have bought that ring for you. Well, I did, and I want you to be my wife. And then just handed it to her. And she
Sat
was like,
back in the boat.
And she was like, well, like in shock to start off with. And then she's like, well, of course, yes, even though you didn't even ask me a question. Just...
Well, congratulations, Sam.
I like the presumptuous nature of you. I wait to be on my wife. Here you go.
Yeah.
Boom. Got the mic.
Full throttle. One of the funniest bits was, as we were boarding the boat, the guy handing us our life jackets went, "Bon voyage," as Del Boy would say.
He's the governor.
Completely the opposite.
Oh my god! I bet he says that to everyone, doesn't he? I bet he says that to everyone.
And then we went back to the hotel room. They were really nice, and had some tea. And then obviously I was able to share with her everything that I planned and done. She was just like, oh my
everything
God.
that she'd ruined.
Yeah, that is amazing.
It's incredible. It's
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you.
If your life has been affected by ice dive, please call in.
Big things happening in the Turner household. Very big things. Big planning to have. But
I think we can all agree
that there are bigger things.
And that bigger thing is that I have started playing fantasy football with you football nerds.
I mean, I was talking about Dan's baby, but...
Oh, alright, yeah, no, we'll talk about that.
I mean, I'm really interested to hear about your fantasy football team.
Yeah.
Because it is a thing of wonder.
Can I explain what fantasy football is?
I don't know.
Okay, let's see in your mind why is fantasy football.
Because Chris, you've never played fantasy football either, have you?
I have played it, yes, but it was a long time ago.
Okay. Well, as a refresher, fantasy football, as I understand it, and I am playing it, it's based on... It's like fantasy baseball and fantasy NFL. It's based on a real football league, and this is soccer, football, British football. Where
so it's based on the English Premier League.
Yes, that. So, and I believe this is the... Yeah, so it's called the Premier League, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. So, in the Premier League, there's lots of football teams that are very, very good. Some of the world's best, actually. And they all compete against one another in a league format to play each other. I think it's twice in a season.
Yep.
And
You're doing well.
They will. Thank you. They will. I did some research. They will play one another twice, and then the person with the most amount of points at the end of that league is declared the winner of the champion of the Premier League.
The winner of the champion?
Yeah, that. And the points that they get is based on a win is 3 points, a draw is 1 point, a loss is 0 points. There's nothing to do with the number of goals that people get. But I think with fantasy football, it takes that into account, but it also takes into account a lot of other things, like did they get sent off? How many goals did they get? Is there anything else that they
Star sign?
Assists. So that is setting up of goals.
Yeah. Okay, so there's other things like that. And then, so the way that you play fantasy football is you pick your team at the start of the season and you say, right, these are all the players that I think are going to do really, really well. So it's like you're creating your own dream team, and then how they do in the real football league is then reflected in the score that you get as part of this fantasy league. So if you really know football well, and you're a little bit lucky, you'll be able to pick the right players in the teams, and you'll be able to say, well, I know they're going to have a really good run this season, and you'll get more points than your friends, and you all take part in your own little separate season with one another, and you follow the real season along, making decisions of who the best players are and how they'll improve your rankings.
Well, that's a very intelligent way of thinking about it, which when I'm looking at your team now...
So, Pete, you actually hand-picked your team. You didn't auto-select.
Right, I hand-picked my team. Now, I know we're not, like... I know I'm not... Well, I don't really know anything about football, but I picked my fantasy football team because I didn't have any knowledge of what if players were any good or not. I picked them based on their names. So...
Me and Sam couldn't tell.
So...
Could somebody please read out Pete's squad?
So, Chris... So, I tell you what, probably the best way of doing this is, Dan, if you read out my team, and then I'll tell you my thinking behind that, them being on the team.
That is my pleasure, and I reckon I can guess some of them.
Right.
I'll tell you what, I'll read out the name, we'll try and guess what you were going for.
Right.
And let's see if you're right. So we'll kick things off.
Nice.
With a goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Called Fabianski.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Well, it's got Fab in the name, isn't it?
Right, bingo. There you go.
That means he's good.
Yeah.
Next one, Hart.
Well, he's got a lot of heart, and I know football players need that, right?
It's in the right place.
Yeah.
Okay. Keane.
Tries really hard, doesn't he?
Exactly.
Okay. Fox.
I think we all know why you picked that one.
Schindler.
Well, he had to make the list.
He made the list. He's your best player so far.
I know, he's good, isn't he?
Snodgrass.
I just thought it sounded a little bit like Snodgrass, which I thought was quite funny. The idea of like grass.
I knew you were going for a snot comparison there. Kante.
Again, I think we all know why I've sort of gone with that one. It sounds a little bit like a sort of stereotypical Faulty Towers-esque foreigner saying a rude word.
Drinkwater.
Again.
Just a reminder. It's just a reminder to himself to drink more.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what footballers need. Currently on 0 points and injured, but carry on.
Yeah. Cleverly.
Well, I thought it was a smart thing to do.
King.
So I thought that maybe he was like an actual, like, I didn't know where he was from, so I thought maybe he's like one of those players that's from a country where like it's a really small country and like their actual professional footballers are also have other jobs. So I thought,
we will send you, son. We will send you to the Premier League, where you will earn riches for the whole family.
The next one is Kane.
That just made me giggle. I thought maybe that. I don't think it is this guy, but I thought that would be really funny if it was like the professional wrestler.
Well, when I looked at your team, Pete, there was one name that I looked at and I thought, that's the first name he picked. That's the one. And this player is Jesus.
You see, I thought that when he picked the player Bong.
Yeah, that player's coming up. So the last three we have...
Yeah.
The last thing we have is Bong, Van Dyke, and finally...
I thought, to be fair, I thought that was Van Dyck. That's not a homophobic joke. That's more of just a penis joke.
Either way, you've come up good.
Yeah.
And the final player is just called Success.
And let's just have a look at the league standings.
Because I need to say, in our league, Pete is currently bottom.
Surprise, surprise.
But not too... Oh, yeah, no, it's quite bad. I thought that was quite clever. I'm quite enjoying it, though. I'm not really... I don't know. I don't think I have to... The problem is that there aren't really any other funny names. So I thought, well, there isn't really anybody else that I can sort of trade in and trade out based on how well they're doing.
But the thing is, what you've done takes more effort than actually doing a little bit of research.
Yeah.
And finding the good players.
Yeah, you looked at more players than me and Sam will have done.
Yeah.
Oh.
Guaranteed.
I really like the idea of this, actually. Like, I really like the idea of a game based on another occasion, another game going on, like a meta game, as it were.
To be fair, when we first suggested this, you were not up for it, and then I kind of said it's like a video game based on real life, and you suddenly went, ooh.
like the way a parent tries to get you to eat that vegetable looks dodgy. It's a bit like this.
I don't know. Like, I'm very much enjoying it, and
good.
I'm hearing names whenever I pass people talking about football, where I'm like, I've got them on my team. Or like
success,
like yeah, exactly.
Jesus,
yeah, yeah.
Obviously, Pete's brought 11 people into the world to play together on a fantasy team. Biggest thing that's going to happen to him all year.
Definitely.
Spend the next 38 weeks or so celebrating their lives. But bigger things are happening, aren't they, Kris?
They certainly are. I want to talk about Inside, which is a game that Sam and I have played recently, which is a spiritual successor to Playdead's Limbo.
But so when you say spiritual successor, is there any, like, I don't want you to spoil anything, but is there any connection between the two, or is that not worth talking about, or
not narratively, but in design? Yes, no. It's another environmental.
That's what
puzzle.
they mean. It's a little bit more of the same, but I would argue that they take it and they enrich it further, and they take it to kind of new heights. Really, it's extraordinary. Really, it is extraordinary. The fact that they delayed the release just so they could tighten the graphics and polish it up is testament just to the quality of it. Really, it is a very, very accomplished game, and I quite like Limbo. But what Inside does is that it takes that really that mechanic, that style of what they call 2.5 gameplay, where it's something that is a little bit taxing at times, but you always feel there's an ease, there's a natural rhythm, a natural pace to it, and they just suddenly immerse it within this incredibly fascinating world. You may have seen it in some of the trailers. This kind of these shadowy kind of dystopic kind of levels and landscapes. And
what kind of dystopia are we talking about here? Like post-apocalyptic, or like?
I don't. To be honest, I don't want to say because I don't really know. I mean, you can't. And I'm quite like that. There's an ambiguity about it all, really, and that's one of the reasons why it still lingers with me now. I'm still thinking about this game now. I'm still trying to unravel it. Still trying to take it apart. I think and it's a game I want to go back to.
One of the things that gives it that sense of feeling is, other than Limbo, which I think even from the title gave it an otherworldly feel. You know, it feels like the title seems to be suggesting that what you're experiencing may or may not be real.
Right,
and especially when very early on in the game you come across creatures that are obviously not of this world, it has that feeling throughout the game, whereas Inside is very early on. It's very clear that this is a game that is present, as in it's set in the present. You're surrounded by, you know, real things that you recognise. It makes a point of making sure that you know that it's set in a world that you could also live in, and that's what it gives it that feel. And it's very sort of the authoritarian tone that it has as well. It also gives it that sort of dystopian feel, that something's just not quite right with this world, rather than the otherworldly feel that Limbo had. This is very much you are in your world, but there's something just wrong with it. There's something strange about everything that's going on and the way that everything's behaving.
And it gives it more peril, I would argue, because when in Limbo, if you come a cropper, there's this part of you thinking, okay, well, it's a dream. I'm not really dead. I'll create in my head this premise that I just wake up or I just go back into the dream. Here, you really feel the peril around every corner, and it's really just a side-scrolling platformer puzzler in which Sam, when he pitched the game to me, said it is just one of the best in terms of environmental design and mechanics and how everything fits in beautifully. It doesn't feel tacked on. There's a logic behind the environment, and it tells a story in its own way in terms of psychogeography. And it's just a joy. You really feel like you're kind of exploring for a novel. And what makes it different to, say, something like Virginia, which I played recently, which is more of a kind of a heightened interactive film.
Yeah.
This is a puzzler as well. It's just an absolute joy. It's a real gorgeous mood piece, which has a lot to say, and I'm still trying to find out what it is saying. Really, God, that sounded really pretentious. But
I think quite a lot of the phrase "leveled at games" just like there's no like hand holding, or people don't like the Dark Souls of whatever. What Inside does really well is it doesn't hold your hand, but the environments are so intricately designed that all the clues you need to solve a puzzle are there right in front of you.
Right.
So rather than taking everything away from the player and sort of abandoning them, everything is there for you as a player. But there's no tutorial, there's no hint system. You just have to look for the clues that are there for you. And I think the feeling that I got when I was playing it was not of, feeling that I was being cheated or that I was being made to work especially hard. Because as soon as I figured out a puzzle, I went, oh, well, obviously if I'd just seen that, I would have figured it out a lot sooner. And if I just looked at where that thing in the world was or how something was moving within the world, I would have realised that that's the consequence of if I move that object there or if I put that there. So there's this feeling that you'll never be made to work really hard, but you are being made to earn the puzzles that you're solving, which is I think that's a big difference between just making a game hard for the sake of it or making a game where you have to earn that achievement, which is a big difference.
It's a massive difference, and Sam's absolutely right. Whenever you're stuck on a puzzle, you don't blame the game, which is sometimes often my default reaction. Oh, this game, what they're doing, this is really bad design. You're in safe hands with this game. With 5 of 5 games, it's on you to find it, and it's right in front of you. This little boy, who you know very little about, just scampering from left to right, jumping over fences, swimming through narrow gaps, as he makes his way inside. And I'm still trying to work out for myself, actually, the title of this game, like Limbo, that Sam said before, what that means, what actually inside means. And it took me into a place I wasn't expecting. The final third of it, also the last act in particular, I just...
it's incredible.
Unbelievable.
So big things. Big things.
Very big things.
Big things.
Big things.
Huge
big
things.
Big things happening. Huge things.
Overwhelming.
So, Dan.
I've been playing Sonic Mania.
I was going to say, Sonic Mania. This is... So, the
best arrival this year.
So, this is basically, with Sonic Mania...
It's what I've been waiting all year for.
Yeah, you have, though. The thing with Sonic Mania... It had so much riding on it, Dan. For me, this game has so much riding on it because for years and years and years, Sonic apologists would go with two things. One, it was, well, Sonic Heroes isn't that bad, and then that was proven categorically untrue. And then, because basically 3D Sonic, I just don't think it works. I just don't think, or at least nobody's been able to figure out it working. And then the other thing that they always fell back on was, but those old games were great. And if we just went back to that old style of 2D Mega Drive / Master System, but mostly Mega Drive era of Sonic, things would be brilliant again. We could still have a brilliant game. Sonic 1, 2, 3, Knuckles, Sonic CD, those were masterpieces, and if we could just do that again, then we'd be alright. Is that true? Now that Sonic Mania is out there, is a game that tries to replicate that experience actually good? Or can we just let that blue hedgehog fucking die?
Having played the originals on the Mega Drive, having played many of the 3D versions, including Sonic the Hedgehog, which was one of the worst games ever made.
I remember coming round to your house, Dan, explicitly just to complete the last level for you that you couldn't finish, and then we all realised that actually that wasn't the end of the game, and there was a shadow section to play.
It was a tutorial.
Oh God.
Yeah, I think at which point I just went, no, I'm done.
Yeah.
No. Having played all of them, I played Sonic Mania with that sense of trepidation, as you mentioned, knowing that it wasn't a brand new game. It was and it wasn't. It was kind of remastering a lot of the old levels and stuff like that. I was like, oh, this could just be a bit of a kind of a cash in. I am delighted to say that I have loved pretty much every minute I have played it.
Really?
It has been remade perfectly, and it feels exactly as the old games used to play. It looks exactly as the old games used to play. There are so many little bits and pieces that kind of muscle memory takes over, and you automatically do certain things. The way they have constructed the game is there are 13 zones, so it's quite a big game as well. It's quite a sizable game. I think I'm about 7 zones in, and I've already put quite a bit of time into it. Each zone having 2 acts, and then what tends to happen is for the zones that they've remastered, the first act is kind of a remastered level from one of the original games, a little bit of differences here and there, and then the second act tends to be that zone, but they've just had some fun with it, and they've just kind of created a level using all of those different kind of ideas and different kind of level designs. I've really enjoyed it, and I can't remember if this was the case with the games years ago, but with this one there are a lot of different ways you can navigate a level. So I've played the same level a couple of times, having died and stuff, and I've gone in completely different directions and gone to completely different areas of the map, which has been fantastic because I've just found a completely different way around. And it's obviously they always had slightly different ways through a level, but this one very much has expanded on that. Some of the new zones are fantastic. They all play into the same kind of sound design and visual design, and even the new levels, they feel like they belong with those old games as well. The only issues I've had with it, and again, I can't remember if this would have maybe been a case with the previous games, at certain times it can fall down the trap that the 3D Sonics did, where it almost feels like the game is playing itself, right, where you're flying around the screen. And this only happened a couple of times. There was one zone in particular, I think it's called Stardust Speedway, which is one of the new zones. I did feel there was a lot of just bouncing you around the screen, and you would spend 10 seconds and you weren't in control. It was just moving you around, which is always the problem I always had with the 3D games, that you just weren't playing it anymore. You would just maybe you'd walk to the end, and then it would basically go into an animation for 15 seconds as you flew around a map, and then you stopped and you did a little bit more. But no, it's really is fantastic, and I've loved every minute of it. There are leaderboards that I haven't been able to kind of use yet, so there is a competitive nature to it. There is local kind of competitive, so it's like a split screen. You've got access to Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, so you can go through the entire game with any of those. And because of the way each of the levels are created, I do feel like if you played it with each of those characters, you would get a different experience because you were able to access different parts of the map. There are certain, I just obviously just playing it through with Sonic, I can tell from the map there are areas that I can't get to. But if I was Knuckles and the kind of the abilities that character has, that's absolutely, I could get up there because that would allow me. I would recommend it unless you just have never got along with Sonic. If you liked the old Sonics, play this game. It's just fantastic. It really is. 2 thumbs up from Dan.
I mean, if you guys really want, I'll do my impression.
Go on.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay.
Go on.
Join dogs!
Yeah, no. I wish I hadn't, actually. A little bundle of joy arrived to me the other day.
Did it?
Yeah, lovely little bundle of joy, which was, of course, my Amazon purchase of Uncharted Lost Legacy.
Did you get Jak and Daxter too?
I did get Jak and Daxter as well, which I thought was going to be the HD remake version that they're doing, and it is not. It is the PlayStation 2 emulated version with some achievements thrown in for good measure. And that's okay, because the thing runs like lightning. Like, it is basically the PlayStation 2 version with no load times, and that is amazing. Uncharted Lost Legacy, The Lost Legacy, is a spin-off from Uncharted 4. In that it takes place mostly after Uncharted 4. I'm not going to spoil Uncharted 4. Yeah, but I'm not. But basically, it has gosh, what's her name? Is it
Chloe?
Zoe? Chloe. I keep calling her Zoe. It has Chloe. And
so I take it you haven't played it yet?
Yes, I have played it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
The characters are really stuck into your mind.
Yeah, that's right.
Naomi and Chloe.
Yeah, it's who's it? Naomi and Chloe. Yeah, so it's Chloe and it's also Nadine.
Oh, that's it, Nadine. Sorry,
Nadine. And basically it is the Uncharted 4 engine. A lot of stuff that you would do in Uncharted 4. So, for example, running around, jumping and climbing on things, driving around a open world-ish area to find new locations to wander about in. Which was obviously something they introduced in the fourth game. There are The Last of Us-esque moments where you start to see their dramatic intention of Naughty Dog, like those moments of quiet, those moments of they're holding your hand, they want you to look at a specific thing, and they want to tell a much darker story.
Is my prediction coming true in your early minutes with the games?
What
is my prediction?
Yeah.
That this is the link between Uncharted and The Last of Us.
I mean, I don't think it's going to happen narratively. I definitely think this is the link mechanically between those two games, in terms of the mechanics of how they handle their storytelling. So, for example, the opening scene, one of the opening scenes, I should say, is there's a moment with a child that basically wanders around this marketplace with you, and that whole scene is just about setting up the culture that you're interacting with and engaging with as part of this story. Like, it sets up the landscape for the game, and the little child is like wandering around, like leading you to different places. You're taking photos with the kid. Like, they're doing really good little jokes that make you really start to care for this child. Where you don't really, the character of Chloe doesn't really know this person, but you start to learn a lot more about who Chloe is as she interacts with this child. And then it goes very swiftly into a high-intensity, high-action sequence, effortlessly, beautifully. And it also sets up the darker things that you'll start to see afterwards, because it is very much like The Last of Us. It is very much about the absence of humanity and how human beings do pretty terrible things to each other. And that's not Uncharted. Like, Uncharted is, hey, let's all go and look for artifacts. Whereas this is much more of a, we need to find this artifact because otherwise this other person is going to do terrible, terrible things with it. And not in a sort of ambiguous, they'll take over the world. You see what terrible things they are getting up to, and it really does give you the impetus to carry on.
How much time have you put into it? Because I've played a little bit, because I knew you wanted to have a little chat about this. So I played kind of the first 2 chapters.
Okay.
So how much time have you put into it so far?
3 hours into it, so I'm at chapter 5.
Okay.
So you're still in the tutorializing that Uncharted does. Where it's saying, like, pick up a treasure, this is how you do it, and it introduces it very cleverly through narrative. This feels like Uncharted 4, but darker. And the interesting thing that I'm finding with it so far is I do not miss Nathan Drake one little bit.
I would agree with that because I'm really enjoying, even though I've not played it for so long, I'm really enjoying spending more time with Chloe.
Yeah.
She was always a really interesting character. I mean, her kind of major role was in Uncharted 2, but she is a really interesting character, and because they've moved forward in terms of their narrative storytelling and with the kind of the graphical abilities that they have now, and the way, I mean, when I started playing it earlier, my wife was next to me and she just commented on how good the facial animations were and kind of pointing out that it's motion capture and you can get that sense of emotion coming through the faces of these kind of digital characters.
There's this sense of the real about the game, and that's not just in like it looks amazing, and obviously it looks amazing, like it is absolutely stunning, but there is the real to it. You mentioned the facial animations in video games a lot. And I don't want to get on a soapbox, but in video games, a lot, the women are always they're always pretty. Like, they're always flawless and kind of, like, angelic. And, like, and you see like, classically, we always see this with, like, MMOs, right? It's like, there's big hulking dudes and they're absolutely jammed with armor, but the higher up you go in terms of armor in, like, a Guild Wars or something like that, the less armor that they're wearing, right? It's just a awful byproduct of video games sometimes. But most of the time, regardless, women in games generally aren't made to look real, they're made to look beautiful. And I'm not saying that the two characters in Uncharted don't look beautiful, but there are facial expressions that Chloe makes that are like, there's bits where like she'll show way too much teeth. Like you would say that was like a goofy expression, but it's just a normal expression. Like it's her. She's really passionate about things, and that's expressed in her facial features. And she's not ugly because of it. She just looks like a real woman because of it, and it's really shocking to see. Like, as somebody who's like entrenched in video games all of the time, you just kind of expect women to be like this pedestal thing, and they just always look amazing. And she looks great, but it's
the imperfections.
Yeah, you're starting to see imperfections, and they even reference it in stuff like when she pulls the map out. There's a bit where you get a map, basically. It's kind of, and it's really essential. You can see her hands, and again, in most video games, they'd just be absolutely clean, flawless, whatever. In this game, they are messed up. Like, she is quite clearly scrabbling over rocks and stones and getting cut up and that sort of thing. And she has really messed up, like, in the section I'm in, I've just done a load of climbing. She's got, like, roughed up hands. She doesn't look flawless. And it is brilliant. Like, not for any sort of, like... I mean, it's great because, obviously, representation of gender, all blah 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 blah, all that great stuff. But the reason it's actually brilliant is because it looks real. Like, you feel much more like this is a reality rather than like, oh, this is just a game narrative. So I really love that stuff about it. The facial expressions, the way that she gets her hands battered, the fact that they make these stupid jokes to each other and they talk about, they're free to talk about themselves and they develop their characters a lot more. Just from that angle,
I think it's because we're so used to sitting there going through this same story, same kind of idea in terms of the wisecrack and the joke stuff. We're so used to being there with Nathan Drake.
Yeah,
it's refreshing to be a different character.
Yeah.
In these one, and to have that back and forth, because the back and forth has always been great, so it's nice to have it with someone who's not Nathan Drake, because it's brand new characters and they have that same freedom of expression.
I'm also really interested in seeing, going back after playing this, which I will do eventually, and then playing Uncharted 4, how it changes my opinion in Nadine, seeing her in the fourth game.
It's hard. It's like, well, I've been playing it and I've been sort of the entire time I've been with Nadine, I've been like, I don't like you. Like, I don't like you as great character. I don't like you because of the stuff that she does in Uncharted 4. But that's great because that's also kind of what role Chloe played in Uncharted 2. Like, she was meant to be this new danger that came into the space, and so was Nadine. And to have them together, they get to tell a very different story.
There's a really nice, just briefly, that you're talking about the map thing that I noticed on Twitter today, and someone was saying about how you notice that when Chloe finds something, she writes it on the map, and then when you're like in the map screen, you can see what she's just written. And one of the developers replied and went, "That's not a map screen. That's just we just zoomed in on Chloe's hands."
Yeah. I mean, the things that they're doing with scale and it's called LODing, LODing. It's called level of detail, and basically game engines will increase or reduce the amount of polygons and like other various elements of like 3D models, so that, like, for example, in Uncharted Lost Legacy, there's this really good pan out shot that I think you've probably already seen, Dan, where it pans out and pans out and pans out, and you just see an amazing amount of detail, and it's all in it's all 3D. But clearly, what they're doing is they've got so many levels of detail, they can reduce the amount of things that you're actually seeing, because otherwise you would just crash that system. But it's flawless. Like, there's a really long load at the start of the game, and then pretty much it's just one effortless story.
Well, that's what Naughty Dog do. I mean, you have that massive loading thing at the start.
Yeah.
And just touching on that thing with the map, there's a similar thing where, because obviously you mentioned terms of taking pictures with your phone. At any time you can take your phone out, but when you do that, it doesn't come up and just zoom straight into the camera. It takes the camera out, and you see her holding it at a distance, and then if you want to, you can zoom back into it.
Yeah.
But she takes the phone out, and then you look at your phone in your hand in front of you, and then you can then go close if you want to, but it's all there for you to see, and you can still be working on your phone from a distance.
And it's so natural. One of the things, and they don't provide this as a UI hint, but you can flick through the images. And they say, just press left or right to flick through the images, but you can also flick with the touch screen, with the little touchpad.
Oh yeah,
and it's just, and it I didn't even think about it. Like I was just like, I'll just do it like that. And there's no prompt, there's nothing like that. It's just like, this just feels really natural.
And that's it. I mean, these are relatively small things, but it's these little things that just create that world that it just kind of engulfs you and says, you know what, I'm in this. Go for it.
I think this, and as I say, I'm 3 or 4 hours in. I've heard it's about 8 hours. I don't think it's particularly long. The thing that I'm noticing is they are jamming in tons of stuff, way more than Uncharted 4. Like, they are just jamming content, and like lots of like amazing models and moving to new spaces. And it feels more dense, whereas like in Uncharted 4, I felt quite often there's a whole sequence in this massive jungle where you're like there for 2.5 hours or whatever it is, and you kind of feel like, if I see another bloody long green palm plant, I'm just going to go nuts. But with this, it's just constant change. It doesn't feel drawn out. It doesn't feel padded. It feels like this is the story we want to tell.
And does it feel like an improvement on Uncharted 4 at all? I know you've only played a little bit of it, but
I feel it's an improvement. For me, it's an improvement in so much as there's more stuff that is different more often, in the same way that one of my favourite of the Assassin's Creed games is a game called Freedom Cry, because it's 8 hours and it basically condenses the 40 hours of Assassin's Creed 4 into an 8-hour experience. This is what Uncharted The Lost Legacy is doing. It's going, right, here's this massive experience you have with Uncharted 4. We're now going to just distill it into this is the core elements of the game. We're just going to tell you this really compact story.
From my admittedly small experience of it, I did have a sense that, and obviously this may change, I didn't have a sense that this game was going to reach the heights of Uncharted 4 in terms of spectacle.
Right.
Certain areas of Uncharted 4, and I think probably the sequence where when you're in the vehicle and you're being dragged behind you, that left me breathless.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to reach and that's completely understandable. This is a smaller game. This is not Uncharted 5. This is completely acceptable. But that's the feeling I've had. And don't get me wrong, there's been spectacle in this even already, and I'm fully on board with all of it. But in terms of if you want to compare it directly with Uncharted 4, I think probably it's just turned down just one or two notches.
So far, that's been my impression of it as well. I'm going to smash through this and report back at some point, I think, because I just think this has come at the exact right time for me. I wanted a narrative game. I wanted a bit of dumb action shooting, big like, whoa, that was amazing kind of experiences. That's what I wanted.
The kind of experience that only really Uncharted gives you.
Yeah. Is there anything else we really need to talk to, or should we just call the podcast and end there? Or
Yeah.
Should we, hang on, I'm
Chris,
just going to look at the
you
sheet.
got nothing.
I'm just looking at the sheet.
Sam,
to see.
nothing. I've got nothing.
Nothing from me. No big things going on.
All right.
That's it, really. Yeah, inside. Yeah, done.
Dan is just looking more and more furious. I love it. I love everything about this. It's just
They say the one
Hey,
thing you need when you're a
I'm
parent
chill.
is
I'm
patience.
relaxed. I'm, you know.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna need to enjoy these moments of calm, Dan.
How
Do you
far
want to tell
away
us
are we
your-
now? How
Yeah.
far away?
Sorry?
I said, how far away are we now?
Well, at time of recording, we are about 3.5 weeks away.
Oof.
Oh my God.
So anyone listening now, it's going to be about 2 weeks. Yeah, just over 2 weeks for listening. That's due date anyway.
A fortnight.
Baby might already be here. That's a scary thought.
Yeah, it's a scary thought that they'll be taking after Chris. Yeah, I think. So Dan.
Hello.
So obviously, this is probably going to be one of your last podcasts. You might be on the next one, but this is probably
Yeah.
going to be one of your last podcasts for a little bit. Obviously, the door is always going to be open for you to come back on whenever you. got a chance.
I hope so.
Well, yeah, we're just going to be like, thank Christ. What are you feeling right now? Are you feeling like nervous? I feel like I'm setting you up for a joke, but I'm not. Like, are you feeling like nervous? Are you excited? Are you worried? Are you just like, oh, I don't give a shit, mate? What is it?
It's a combination of excitement and nervousness.
All right.
Nervous excitement, one could say.
Yeah, it's a weird one of kind of. I've been with my wife for nearly 12 years now, and it's just been us two, and now it'll never be just us two again. That's weird.
That is weird.
And that's kind of in the last few weeks that thought has kind of been like, ooh, yeah, like over the entire kind of pregnancy process, it's been like, okay, this is not something that's a short term thing. There's no stepping back away from this. This is it forever.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a crazy thought, but no, I'm excited, and yeah.
But you've got to say
Very
that, Dan.
excited.
Right. Pretend that Holly's
I
not
do
in
have
the
to say
room.
that. Yeah,
It's just
my wife could be listening to the room.
We've stopped recording now, Dan. What do you actually think?
What do you really think?
God, I'm terrified. This is the worst thing I've ever done.
But obviously it's massively exciting. We're all very excited for you, and I think, like, so have you got everything now? You've got all the kit. You've got the motorized.
Let's see what kit Pete thinks I need.
No, you've got we've talked about this. You've bought the motorised pram. You've bought the what was the other? So you bought the dartboard.
You got rid of the coffee table.
You've done all that stuff. But I mean, so
I replaced the coffee table actually.
Really?
What did you replace it with?
Well, with another coffee table, but a better one.
Ah, right. Okay, one without sharp edges.
Yeah, it's inflatable.
Is it actually?
I imagine an inflatable coffee table is quite a niche market.
Yeah. Don't put the coffee down there!
Yeah, just overheats. You've got everything sorted. You're mentally preparing yourself. Now, how is your better half?
My lovely wife and
Is she-
the mother to be is doing very well.
I bet this is the thing with Holly. I bet it's just a breeze. I bet it's just a breeze for her. I bet she's just like, whatever.
Well, I think like any woman who is 8.5 months pregnant, she's somewhat uncomfortable.
I see. The thing is, I would have thought Holly would just be like shrugging it off, like, no, whatever.
Well, it's without getting into too much detail.
No, of course, yeah.
Pregnancies aren't easy.
No, I'm sure they're not.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I realised, and I realised this very early on. Yeah. This whole thing about gender equality is a load of nonsense. There is no equality between men and women. Women are by far on a much, much higher level.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And that kind of really just sank in. I was like, yeah, men just could not do this.
No,
you kind of praise any woman who has ever gone through any kind of pregnancy because it's just an incredible thing.
I don't want to go into the icky bits, but there's a
God forbid.
Please don't.
The thing I've noticed is that when people become pregnant, it seems like that's when people start to realise all of the horrible things that happen in pregnancy. Like in society, we very much see pregnancy as like this wonderful, beautiful.
Where is this going? I mean,
what I'm saying is,
start listing off all the horrible things that could. No.
I'm not gonna. No. And I'm not talking about like
the sound of music.
I'm not talking about like horrible, negative, dark things. I'm talking about like just the mechanics of how a baby is born, like when they start.
Let me jump in, before. Let me jump in while the hole is still relatively shallow. Yeah. Let Pete get out. Okay.
The midwife's like literally on one of those trolleys with wheels that he just rolls underneath.
But you know what I mean? Like people start to say I feel like when people are thinking about having a child, the conversation is always around like how amazing it is and how beautiful it is and all that sort of stuff. And not that any of that stuff is going to change, but I think like when people go through a pregnancy, from what I've seen so far, is people start to talk about, oh no, like here are the realities of having a child, and actually like they are things that we tend not to talk about.
Well, you know, most of us, me included, when you think about kind of pregnancy and kind of the to giving birth stuff, you kind of your brain obviously goes to what you know TV, film, this kind of these depictions of it. Obviously, throughout the process, I've read a lot, I know a lot. We've done kind of antenatal classes and stuff like that. You learn that the stuff in the TV or the cinema is nothing like the reality. Yeah. And it's kind of like, this is just a thing that you've assumed all your life, and actually it's completely different.
Can you debunk a myth for us, Dan?
Yeah, debunk a myth.
Debunk a myth. Mythbusters Baby Edition.
I'm choosing the myths to debunk very carefully, because I'm aware that I'm talking about my pregnant wife.
Of course.
Okay.
Someone here, describe to me, based on your knowledge of film and TV, describe a woman in labour.
Knees up in the air, like positioned upright.
That's the worst way for labour.
Really?
To have a woman on her back is the worst way.
Yeah,
that can actually you can actually break your tailbone.
What?
Having given birth that way.
Oh. On the side?
No, on the front.
Well, no,
on the
hang on,
side?
not your tailbone.
What are you doing, Chris? On the side? Think about what you're saying before you say it.
Descending from the ceiling.
Oh, God, Chris.
But yeah, I think probably
Casual.
You see that in TV and film.
Yeah.
That's probably visually the best way of being able to depict it.
Yeah.
But that is not the way that it should be done.
There we go.
There you go. Myth debunked. Obviously, if someone wants to have a baby that way, they can. But it's not recommended.
Shatter their lower spine.
God, we provide such a good service on this podcast, don't we?
I'm just reading about nipple confusion.
That's the name of my new experimental punk band. Well,
okay, maybe not myths, Dan, but what is it that you had a preconception about that has been kind of debunked for you? Something you've learned through this process that maybe other people haven't, say?
Well, one, I've learned that babies are really expensive, like really expensive.
Yeah.
That was a not nice surprise to find. Finding out that kind of in the early days of kind of after a baby has been born, they need to eat between 8 and 12 times a day.
Oh, it's like not just as babies, Dan.
Are you giving birth to
Well,
Chris?
there'll be no time for me. They need to be changed between 6 to 10 times a day.
Again.
And I'm just I did an antenatal class, and they did a really good exercise where they pull out. You have a big pile of photos of babies in different moods, or sleeping, or happy, or sad, or crying, or angry, or anything like that. Angry babies. And then you have a 24-hour kind of list, and on each hour you pick out a picture and you put that picture there for that hour, and you have to say what's the mum doing, what's the dad doing, and you have to get through that 24 hours, and you've got to factor in a minimum of 8 feeds, a minimum of 6 changes. You've got to fit in as much sleep for each parent as you can, and you suddenly realise that it's just all-encompassing. It's 24 hours. And then this is obviously in the earlier, few weeks and months and stuff. But that kind of sense of there is no sense of night and day. There is not a case of it's night time. We're okay. We can settle for 6 hours. No. after 2 hours, if the baby's asleep, you've got to wake the baby up because it's got to feed again. You can't just wait for it to wake up. It's that kind of thing that is kind of was really interesting to kind of realise, and it really kind of hits home the kind of the importance and how that, as I said before, everything changes.
Yeah.
Everything changes. Your entire world is literally turned upside down.
So you're thinking to yourself,
but in a good way.
You're thinking to yourself, probably haven't got time to come along, dick around on a podcast.
Yeah, I'll be asleep.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah, well, maybe one day I will.
The great return.
Maybe the stars will align.
It reminds me of that one time that I was on a sailing ship once, because we had to do everything in 2-hour watches. So you'd spend 2 hours on watch, and then you'd spend 2 hours down at the deck. And
yeah, it's exactly like that, Sam.
Exactly the same. Yeah,
I actually imagine it would be more like the time that I decided to go for a shower on the same ship.
Oh, I love this story.
In the middle of the North Sea.
What?
For some reason, I don't know what possessed me to do it, but I went. I was on a tall ship, on a proper sailing vessel in the middle of the North Sea, and I decided to go for a shower whilst the ship was violently rocking from side to side. I managed to flood the shower and had to spend 20 minutes naked bailing out the shower after I'd sustained many bruises and cuts from being hammered from side to side, just trying to clean myself. Oh my god, it was and that's what childbirth is all about. Let's not forget the miracle.
That's exactly the same.
Of having to shower in a cubicle in the middle of the North Sea is my allegory to childbirth.
Yeah, that's a lot more relatable.
Myth busted.
Myth busted. To finish this, Dan, what's the one thing you're looking forward to most? Not just necessarily about baby being born, but baby's life. Taking him to his first football match, or just some first word, or
reading him a book that you were read as a child, say, for example.
I can't wait to read my kid The Hobbit. Cannot wait.
I mean, to be fair, I've thought about it. It might be because I've watched the films or listened to it recently. I have thought about kind of Lord of the Rings and kind of sharing things like that.
Yeah.
With sharing those kind of things in the way that my parents would have shared them with me, and then kind of passing that down the line. I did actually think the first video game because my dad doesn't play video games at all, other than Candy Crush. He's never played video games. But I remember when I got my PlayStation, he bought me. I think I got FIFA with it and Crash Bandicoot. But he also got me Oddworld Abe's Exodus because he thought that looked really fun, and we played that together. And in my mind, I'm thinking, in a couple of years' time, baby might be able to play video games. They could play Oddworld Soulstorm, which is the HD remaster of Abe's Exodus. It's like the circle has come full circle, and I will play with my child the same game I played with my dad. That
sounds awesome.
Meanwhile, you're in the background playing on Candy Crush.
Yeah.
The circle of life.
Yeah. That's the only kind of game. That's the only game I'll have left now. So I have to finish Uncharted, Sonic Mania, and anything else on my shelf, and it's quite a lengthy shelf of games in the next 2 weeks.
Then it's the darts.
Yeah.
That was Staying In with Dan Frost, Peter Willington, Sam Turner, and myself, Kris Darby. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Visit stayingin.podbean.com for more information and links to the comics, movies, games and more covered in this episode. And come find us on Twitter @StayingInPod. Thanks for listening.